Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Paul, hopefully having an amazing day. Nvidia is very aware at the moment that AMD are putting a ton of pressure on its RTX 50 lineup. The RX 9070 XT doesn't have enough grunt to compete with the 5090, but in terms of sales figures, it certainly is putting a ton of pressure on the RTX 5080 and other such GPUs, and it's going to be very interesting when the 9060 XT actually releases, what impact it will have on Nvidia's lineup. But we cannot forget about Battlemage. Technically speaking, Intel were very forthcoming regarding its plans for GPUs when it first announced Alchemist. We learned that there would be Battlemage, Celestial, and finally Druid, but Battlemage has not had its higher end variants released as of the time I'm recording this video, and the future for Celestial, depending on who you believe, well, has been very up in the air. Now, it seems that the CEO of Intel, obviously it did change, but Intel are still remaining committed to discrete graphics. And XE3, which is codenamed Celestial, is still going to be debuting in Panther Lake and most likely also discrete graphics. And we'll get more into that in just a second. But I also want to focus just a little bit on Battlemage and whether or not we're going to see higher end variants launch. So, Battlemage G31 actually may end up launching, at least in some form or another. IBC C32 SKT, which is allegedly another rework of G31, just so you guys know. Originally it was G21 and then basically it became G31, so Intel have kind of reworked the higher end variant several times at this point. Regardless of the semantics, Michael on Twitter, I'll leave of course a link to this in the video description, is stating that yes, this actually may be a rework again, and also Raichu has had a really good track record with all things Intel, and they also believe that the higher end Battlemage, which of course was formerly known as the B770, is going to be released eventually. Now I have to say, from what I've heard, yes, Intel are still considering this, but the question is, of course, will it actually see the light of day? Honestly, I'm not 100% certain, but what I do know is Intel are not planning to abandon the discrete GPU market anytime soon. I think that they have a lot of uncertainty, and I do think certain products, especially for certain projects that perhaps weren't super lucrative, may be cancelled. But in terms of GPUs, I do think that the company are pretty ambitious about those in the future. So I do believe that Celestial in one form or another will remain like a focus for the company. And we also have some evidence of this. Now, albeit one is a little bit wishy-washy, and this is from Thomas on Twitter. They were actually very good at finding a lot of the RDNA 4 leaks a while back. But they basically were digging through various code snippets from Intel, and what all of this code doesn't necessarily matter a whole amount, but essentially it's just on terms of how the driver overhead is being, well, just how the driver overhead works for GPUs. Now, this potentially could improve gaming performance, but certain workloads it might reduce it, so maybe they're going to change this, and depending on the actual usage scenario of the GPU. But anyway, what really is important for the sake of this video, of course, is the fact that XE3P no longer supports load balance mode, so fix C-slice. Of course, again, XE3P is a reference to Celestial. Now, most likely this is not going to be a high performance variant of the GPU, but at the very least it does give us some indication that the architecture itself is being worked on. And we also have further evidence to this, and this is actually a reference to GDDR7. Now, naturally, GDDR7 is not used at the moment for Battlemage, it's GDDR6, but of course GPUs such as the RTX 5090 and other RTX 50 GPUs all use GDDR7. RDNA 4 does not use GDDR7, it also sticks with GDDR6. However, AMD in the future for UDNA, or perhaps you may also know it as RDNA 5, will use GDDR7, and Intel may well be doing the same thing. Hayes2K1 on Twitter has actually managed to find this, and you can see that it's a job posting. It was posted around 4 days ago as of the time I'm recording this. Well, that's actually 5 days ago because they tweeted this yesterday, so 5 days ago. And you can see that the memory subsystem validation engineer is responsible to drive and deliver pre and post silicon validation and characterization of GDDR6 and 7 on Intel ARC products. I have heard some specifications for Celestial, but as of the time I'm recording this video, quite frankly, I'm so not confident in the information because, quite frankly, we've seen so much weirdness with even Battlemage's cancellation of, as we've discussed earlier, G31 and so on, and then potentially it's coming back again. G21 was also cancelled, so there's just a lot of reworking of things. So even if, technically speaking, the specifications I have were right at one point or another, they may have changed, so I'm going to try to get them, well, at the very least, somewhat collaborated, and maybe I'll release them if I can. But I do want to mention some interesting stuff regarding Nova Lake. So Nova Lake, of course, will be the successor to Arrow Lake, and back in February I actually released a video where I did mention that, of course, this is going to be on a brand new socket. I mean, let's face it, guys, Intel have this allergic reaction to actually releasing more than 1 or 2 generations of processors on the same socket. And I do think that while this does make some logical sense in some ways, in terms of like bringing new features, I also feel that it perhaps does eat into some of the success. Because, for example, let's say you bought, I don't know, AM4 with Ryzen, let's just hypothetically say the 3700X, you knew that you were good for a couple more generations. If you jumped in with Zen 4, you knew that AM5 was going to last you, of course, for Zen 5 and almost certainly Zen 6. So I think that confidence does help a lot. Yeah, sure, you may not have the latest and greatest motherboard, maybe you don't have as good of support for some memory or what have you, but at the very least it can be a nice platform to get you started and help reduce the pain of upgrades. But regardless, Nova Lake S is going to be on the 1954 socket. So LGA 1851 is going to remain for Arrow Lake, and there's also, yes, going to be some type of refresh for Arrow Lake. Now, to my understanding, the refresh of Arrow Lake is not going to be that big of a deal. Essentially, if you have, let's say, a 265K or what have you, unless you want to upgrade just your core count as a rule, I would just say that the 265K, refresh isn't going to be a big deal. To my understanding, the cores don't see like a massive improvement or anything like that. There's no like major architectural improvement. Essentially, it is going to just be higher clock frequencies, maybe some improvements on the NPU. So I wouldn't say it's lackluster, but it's kind of a eh. Nova Lake, though, will be a very different story. Of course, it's going to benefit from entirely different architecture. And WCCF Tech, courtesy of ORAC on Twitter, actually have managed to discover a FOC item VR voltage regulation test tool, an LGA 1954 Nova Lake S interposer for Gen 5 VR test for R&D purposes, and I won't read out the rest of it. Again, this is a validation tool for the Nova Lake platform. Nova Lake, I do think, is going to be a very interesting architecture. It's going to be absolutely fascinating to see how it compares against Zen 6, because the core counts for Nova Lake, unless, again, products get cancelled, absolutely skyrocket. It's 16 performance cores, 32 E cores, and there's also 4 LP cores. And Jakin on Twitter mentioned this, but also I've had multiple sources that have told me much the same thing. It's going to have a huge amount of cache as well, a BLCC. I didn't even tell you the amount, 144 megabytes of BLLC, and I believe that this is going to be attached to the first compute tile, so it's kind of similar in concept to what AMD have done with like the 7950X3D and also the 9950X3D, albeit with some changes. And of course we're going to see both Panther Cove and Arctic Wolf being used for these. It's going to be very interesting to see how the performance scales, like I said. At this stage, clock frequencies and certain, performance characteristics aren't clear, but I do think it's going to be a very impressive architecture. I mentioned in a video, maybe like, I think it was late February, maybe early March, something like that, that I have heard that there are some major changes for Zen 6 as well. and therefore, just with what they've done with the architecture, I think that there's a very good chance we could see like 6 gigahertz, close to that for Zen 6, maybe even faster. So I think the next generation of processors will be very impressive. With that said, Zen 5 is no slouch. So to my understanding, both AMD and Intel are targeting 8000 MTS of memory. That's of course going to be DDR5 with a release date of the second half of 2026. But anyway, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and all of that stuff. Oh, and one last quick thing. Sorry for no camera for today, but I'm just coming back from a whole Easter thing, so things are a little bit chaotic. Normal service will resume tomorrow. And second thing regarding normal service, I've had a number of folks reach out to me asking my opinions about all the PlayStation 6 information that's been leaked and discussed, including the handheld. Yes, I have seen it, and I've spoken to some sources about this. I just haven't had time to cover it because I was doing the RTX 5060 Ti review and I was away for a few days for Easter. But now I'm back, so I'm hoping by like tomorrow or the day after that, I'll be discussing the PS6 things with some exclusive information. With that said, take care of yourselves. Bye for now.